Ora, bons dias pessoal, como é que estão todos por aí, todos porreirados, espero eu. Hoje temos aqui uma compilação de Egipto, pirâmides e mais pirâmides e mais pirâmides. As pirâmides é uma daquelas perguntas que toda a gente faz, é quem é que construiu aquilo? No fundo ninguém sabe. Já ouvi várias versões, inclusive que foram aliens, extraterrestres, que os egípcios descobriram as pirâmides, não as construíram, descobriram, já lá estavam. O facto é que ninguém sabe ao certo os anos que aquilo tem, que era para colocar os corpos dos faraós. Nunca se encontrou uma múmia lá dentro. Outro mistério. No fundo, ninguém sabe exatamente para o que servem as pirâmides. E não é só esta do Egito, elas estão espalhadas pelo mundo inteiro, mas hoje vamos falar aqui do Egito. Fiquem então aqui os vídeos. Isto é uma coleção, são vários vídeos, espero que gostem. Foi várias coisas que eu encontrei na net, e nos TikToks, neste caso. E bom fim de semaninha. Bom fim de semaninha, sábado, domingo, sem fazer nada, de preferência. Aproveitem e bom descanso. Abraço!
So this is a map of pyramids all around the world, all allegedly built independently of each other and all having identical structures that follow this similar step pattern. Now I know, most historians will tell you, oh, it's just the easiest tall structure to build, it's human nature. If it's so easy, why are our 21st century brains not capable of doing what dozens of ancient civilizations have repeatedly been able to do? We got the famous pyramids of Djoser in Egypt, but everyone knows about those. Across the world, there's Chichen Itza, Pyramid de los Nichos, Tikal Temple, the Great Pyramid of Cholula, among others in Mexico. And then on the other side of the planet, we got Kokur and Prasat Baksay Chem Krong in Cambodia. Off the coast of a tiny Japanese island deep within the ocean is the sunken Yonaguni monument, a supposed 10,000 years old, older than even the Egyptian pyramids. All with a nearly identical look, yet built by completely different cultures with zero contact among each other and thousands of kilometers apart. But this is just the tip. We got way more lesser known pyramids even older than the Egyptian ones that ain't even standing anymore. Like the Gunung Padang temple in Indonesia. Doesn't look so hot now, but used to be a step pyramid a whole 9,000 years ago. At least that's what they thought, until a more recent radiocarbon analysis shows that the lower parts of this temple go as far back as 28,000 years. Then this enormous hill in Bosnia was studied, and almost every archaeologist that visited it confirmed that it could not have been naturally formed, perfectly aligning to true north among many other characteristics of pyramids. These studies found out this hidden monument is over 35,000 years old and would be the oldest and largest pyramid in the world, hidden under years of vegetation. But the Bosnian government strangely halted further study on this thing for some reason. There's a crazy story behind what they found there, which honestly deserves its own video, so I'll probably be dropping that sometime. Fallen Pyramid of Hellenikon in Greece has boulders that are joined so tightly that even a human hair can't fit through the joints without any sort of ancient cement used. Built around 3000 BC, meanwhile an almost identical masonry techniques was found in these walls in the city of Cusco in Peru, called Sacsayhuaman, over 11,000 kilometers away. And how old are these walls? Mainstream history will tell you they were built around the 15th century, but researchers recently uncovered a writing system built directly within the blocks of these walls that's well over 30,000 years old. Again, a topic that deserves its own video coming soon. This exact method is also found on a site called Ahu-Vinapu on the remote Easter Island, older than even their legendary Moai heads, as well as Khafre's Valley Temple in Egypt. How did our ancient ancestors figure out these identical building techniques completely independent of each other when we still have no idea how they did it to this day? Now we get to the Ellsworth Mountains in Antarctica. Okay, get your tinfoil hats ready for this one, because this satellite footage from 2016 shows what could be a pyramid buried in the South Pole. This map from 1513 by sailor Piri Reis shows a perfectly accurate coastline of Antarctica, even though it wasn't officially discovered 300 years later in 1820. What's weird is this map connects South America to Antarctica, which it could very well be that over 10,000 years ago these two continents were connected by a sheet of ice. Researchers claim this map was sourced from an even more ancient document that survived from the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, which was destroyed by the Romans. What if the builders of of Giza left this map as directions as to where else they put pyramids around the world. And the pyramids are just the start. Take a look at these ancient artifacts from Bolivia, Turkey, Indonesia, and Easter Island. 4 completely separate corners of the world, all with identical carvings and artistic styles used, and again, thousands of kilometers apart and absolutely no contact among each other. Just another coincidence, right? Now get a load of this one here. I know it sounds crazy, but you'd be surprised. Ancient lasers, or at least some form of precision cutting technology that is on par with our modern drilling methods. From these perfectly cut stone patterns in Pumpampunku, Bolivia, to the unfinished obelisk at Aswan and the boxes at the Serie of Saqqara in Egypt, made of granite, one of the hardest materials ever, with insane accuracy only achievable with today's technology. The Al Nasla rock in Saudi Arabia literally looks like a giant laser beam just cut right through it. Meanwhile, the Kailash temple in India, which was somehow cut into a cliffside with perfectly symmetrical hallways carved with copy-paste level precision. Not to mention the perfect doorways carved into Barabar caves thousands of years earlier. And these star holes found in Flint Quarry, Massachusetts, and even all the way in Norway, all indicating some sort of highly advanced drilling or precision laser technology used. The incredible list of similarities among these ancient cultures tells us that they all clearly had some sort of external influence that guided them, which they actually recorded proof of directly into their stone tablets, wall carvings, and hieroglyphics. Alright, that might be enough for now. I think I'll save that for another video, so keep an eye out for that one if I don't disappear before then. This large granite box carved by the Egyptians is on display at the Cairo Museum, which, by the way, granite is hard as harder than steel, and we typically use diamond-tipped electric buzzsaws to cut through it these days. So this box was abandoned by the Egyptians due to this mistake in the cut. Now wait, hold up. I want you to think about this for a sec. Modern explanations claim that the methods ancient Egyptians used to cut granite involved painfully slow and repetitive sawing techniques using copper tools. Don't you think they would have noticed a mistake like this way sooner if they were actually using those snail pace techniques? Cut like this would have taken several hours, if not days of work, and there's no way they would have done it for that long without noticing this error. They were way smarter than that. Like seriously, the top Egyptologists claim this is how they cut granite back then. A rate of 4 millimeters per hour, and they're still standing by it. Clearly, the people cutting this block would have booked this mistake much earlier in the process. And they'd have no reason to continue sawing the granite for hours or even days longer as soon as they saw this inaccuracy. Unless they were using some other unknown cutting technique, one that is far quicker than our history books suggest, and possibly far more advanced than even our diamond-tipped buzzsaws. Hey, yo, I gotta go. I've said too much.
The statue faces and the symmetry. How can you possibly do that by hand? This will wow you.
Yeah, so there's elements to precision, and one of those is symmetry. And there's been some interesting studies done on the faces of giant statues. One in particular is the face of Ramses. There's a statue at Luxor. Chris Dunn was real seminal in this. He went and took a photo, like bang on, like very front on, and then what he did was take a copy of that photo, you make it 50% transparent, make the original 50% transparent, you take one and you flip it like on that horizontal axis, then you overlay them, right? It's like overlaying the left side on the right side, and it's perfect. But what's interesting about the symmetry, it's perfectly symmetrical, left to right. Now, this isn't a feature in humans. No human is perfectly symmetrical, different nostrils, different eyeballs. It's also not something that is done in artwork. So, people often say, well, Michelangelo, he carved David. It's a beautiful statue. I've seen it. It's incredible. But it's human. It's not symmetrical. Symmetrical is, you can't achieve that degree of symmetry just by eyeballing it and doing it by hand. And it's also something that's not really human. I think some of these statues almost look a bit inhuman because of that symmetry when they're up there and they're staring at you, because it's mind-blowing to actually go and look at them.
For the first time, cameras were allowed inside the Black Pyramid.
The Black Pyramid.
Enjoy.
Its construction resembles that of the Princess's Pyramid, so may hold clues to how it was looted. Once it was clad with limestone, but that's long gone, leaving its mud brick core to erode.
Although today the pyramid is this standing black tower surrounded by a slump of disintegrated mud brick, the substructure, the interior, is truly amazing.
Underground lies the most complex labyrinth of the age. But in the troubled late Middle Kingdom, even this was wrong. This is the first time cameras have ever been allowed inside. Straight away, it's clear that the stone staircase and limestone passages echo those at the newly discovered Princess's Pyramid. But what other clues to our mystery lie within?
So I have to tell you, it's the first time I've been down here in 36 years. It's so humid. The humidity and the warmth here is astounding.
The labyrinth was built for the pharaoh Amenemhet III and his queens in the 19th century BC.
Well, we have a number of choices. There's a king section and there's a queen section. So I'm going to try to figure out what is the right turn to get into the king section.
King Amenemhet's wing is situated to the north of the pyramid. A bewildering system of passageways and dead ends.
He wants to make it complicated, to confuse any would-be robbers, and to set them off false trails, to take them to dead ends, to snare them in deep shafts. They're trying any number of ways to secure the king's royal burial.
But the complexity of the underground labyrinth came at a price.
Everywhere you can see the signs of structural failure. You can see where stones are literally buckling out. You're looking at cracks developing as you're working, like these, you know, down the ceiling. It must have truly terrified the workers. The burial chamber of the king, I think, is our next left turn. Maybe, if I'm right. So back here, entirely encased in fine white limestone, this beautiful granite sarcophagus. Here, Amenemhet would have been buried. At the northern end of the sarcophagus, his two eyes. When he was laid out as a mummy, his two eyes could look out towards the east, the direction of the rising sun, forever.
To the west of the pyramid are the burial chambers of Amenemhet's two queens, with their treasures hidden separately in the most remote part of the labyrinth.
This passage is all clay. It's all what they call tuffla. It's not very secure. All this wood, the back layer of wood is ancient. It's cedar from Lebanon to ensure it doesn't collapse.
When the pyramid was first explored in the 1970s, the passages were filled with massive blocks of stone. This prevented the corridors from collapsing and once created an impenetrable barrier to the Queen's most precious possessions.
At the end of this narrow corridor, we come on to something really beautiful. Tucked away in another nicely cased chamber, cased again with beautiful limestone, a polished alabaster box.
Like the Mystery Princess's pyramid, the canopic chest is the only treasure that remains. Hers was made out of wood. This one for a queen is made from the finest alabaster.
So beautiful, the alabaster, lustrous, and when you put a light in, shines through.
The complex maze, empty tombs and passages blocked with stones should have made this pyramid impenetrable. Yet it was broken into. So why didn't the security measures stop thieves getting to the royal gold?
One of the reasons it didn't, it looks like the pyramids were robbed very soon after they were closed, and therefore it would have been by those who actually knew the mechanisms. the ways underneath and into the pyramid. And so it's a saying that its guard is its thief.
The number one place in the world for technology research is right down there in Antarctica. I believe that as the ice is melting, they're finding remnants of an ancient civilization. We know that Antarctica was not a frozen tundra. Mainstream science says 12 million years to build up all this ice. No, that's not accurate. We know this because of the Piramides map. The Piramides map shows Antarctica what it looked like without ice on it, and that's not even that old. So we know that Antarctica shifted into that spot. How? Because we know that Antarctica is surrounded by tectonic plates. And so that landmass was on a plate that slipped. There was something called a pole shift of the crust of the earth, which shifted it from a more habitable climate into the position it is now. And that's why the animals that are being uncovered from the ice were flash frozen with undigested food in their stomachs. And there's an entire advanced civilization there, including some of the largest pyramids on earth right in Antarctica.
Breaking news, everyone. We just found out how to build a pyramid. Turns out the pyramid deniers were right this entire time, and it is possible to build pyramids today. Let me show you how it's done. First, we obviously gotta prep our stone blocks using high-powered 20th century machinery. Let's load it up in this truck right here. Oh, well, that didn't really work. Let's try again over here. Oh, whoops. You weren't supposed to see that. This modern crane right here should do the trick. Yeah, maybe not. Turns out even modern technology struggles to lift these megalithic stones, and the ones we saw here weren't even more than like 20 tons. Here we have an industrial grade crane barely lifting a 30-ton rock just a few feet off the ground. Yet the ceiling stones of the King's Chamber and the Great Pyramid of Giza were around 80 tons each, lifted over 50 meters off the ground over 4,000 years ago, all with allegedly more primitive technology. Not sure how they did that. Obviously, it's totally possible to lift these stones with modern technology. It's just not always easy. And again, we're talking modern technology made in the past 100 years. The fact that we're even questioning the technological possibility of building stone block pyramids with the advanced cranes and trucks of today is impressive on its own. And we haven't done it yet, so we don't even have hard proof that we actually can. Oh wait, yeah, I forgot, we did build one. Actually, we built a lot. And of course we did. Pyramid-shaped structures are very possible to build using modern materials and methods such as pouring concrete or putting together intentionally manufactured smaller pieces of glass and metal in order to form bigger parts, which we piece together, and is how impressive feats of architecture like the Burj Khalifa are possible. But it's when you use singular stone blocks weighing up to 80 tons from hundreds of kilometers away, even smaller 2-ton blocks of sheer raw stone using no machinery, is when things get questionable, and the process even becomes more impressive than the end result. Here's a 1-ton block of stone versus a truck. Yeah, that shit is heavy. So instead of completely shutting down speculation on how these impressive structures were made, maybe we should be asking ourselves, what lost technology did our ancient ancestors have? At it. This thing is massive and it's over 4,000 years old. Oh, but we do have a pyramid bigger than that and nobody's talking about it. The Great Pyramid of Giza is peanuts against the buried Pyramid of the Sun in Bosnia, and you will not believe what they found there. In 2005, archaeologist Dr. Samir Osmanagic realized, hey, this hill in the small Bosnian city of Visoko is oddly shaped like a pyramid. And shaped like a pyramid was an understatement. This hill has virtually every characteristic of a real pyramid, and we continue to ignore it. To start, it has 4 triangular sides. That's it. Pyramid confirmed. We're done. Joking, but it's got even grade slopes and corners that connect perfectly under the foliage, along with an apex at the very top, the exact shape of a pyramid, but oh, it don't end there, Johnny boy. It's also perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions, north, east, south, and west, much like Giza. In fact, this one is even more aligned to true north than Giza, being only 1/300th of a degree off from perfect north, whereas Giza is 2/60ths of a degree off. They even took EMF, electromagnetic frequency readers, to the top and saw readings of 60 times more of what is normally expected on Earth. Another phenomenon that tends to occur at the pyramids, and the reason why is so mind-baffling that we'll have to save that for a future video. This hill was aptly named the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, the first pyramid of its kind in Europe, taller than the Great Pyramid of Giza and even bigger than the biggest pyramid of the world, Cholula in Mexico, with 4 other smaller hills around it that are also suspected to be pyramids or some other structures, as is usually the case at these ancient sites. Sure, it might just look like a hill covered in trees, but have a look at what the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, Mexico looked like before it was excavated and after. Same with Machu Picchu and after, and Chichen Itza. and after. Any ancient site that isn't in a desert is typically covered with overgrowth, and the Bosnian pyramid is looking a lot like that before stage. And just have a look at these drone shots and tell me these formations look natural to you. So Dr. Osmanagic began the excavations, and now get this, radiocarbon analysis taken from the rocks hidden beneath the vegetation revealed that this pyramid would be over 35,000 years old, the oldest pyramid in the world by a long shot, over 30,000 years older than Giza, during a time in which traditional history claims only tribes and cavemen incapable of erecting such monuments roamed the earth, far before any civilizations began to form, or so we think. For reference, here's a timeline of all major ancient civilizations and structures built around the world. And here is where the Bosnian pyramid would stand in that timeline. Excavations also revealed huge blocks of 7 tons each, stacked with geopolymer binding, which is an ancient type of cement, and perfect placement, along with perfectly landscaped terraces and other obvious architectural design, but oh no, these are all natural. Note that this was all uncovered up to a meter underground, as would be expected of a pyramid over 35,000 years old. And of course, the archaeological gatekeepers of the world insisted this is just coincidental, with some even going as far as saying Dr. Osmanagic purposely placed these carved stones here to deceive the public. And famed Egyptologist Zahi Hawass, who oversees most of the Egyptian pyramid investigations, even petitioning the Bosnian government to stop these excavations. Within hours of this international discovery, the story is swept under the rug and labeled a hoax. Well, over 50 archaeologists around the world remained optimistic and actually joined Osmanagic's work in Bosnia, with virtually every single one of them who actually saw it in person confirming that nature could not have formed these hills. Further studies revealing an entire underground tunnel system in the area, the longest subterranean complex of any pyramid in the world. Inside these tunnels, large stone blocks were found that clearly seemed to be artificially created and placed. Other artifacts like this giant round stone that no one can explain, and a whole bunch of other smaller ancient trinkets, statues, and even what appears to be a map carved into stone were all found around the Bosnian Valley of Pyramids, all dismissed as irrelevant or flat out ignored by mainstream archaeology. Even the peak of the Sun Pyramid forms a perfect triangle with the peaks of the nearby hills, dubbed the Pyramids of the Moon and the Dragon. Another crazy coincidence, right? After much pushback, the government actually did grant Osmanagic the right to continue excavations, but with no official funding, the entire project depends on donations and volunteer work. These excavations are still going on, but after tourism to Bosnia slowed down in the last couple of years, progress on these pyramids have as well. As with anything, you could probably rationalize a completely valid reason for each of these discoveries, and maybe it really is somehow just a hill. So you think we're tweaking on this one, or are we onto something? Who's ready to get digging?
Have you ever wondered what it looks like inside the Great Pyramid of Giza? We went in today and I'll show you what it looks like. We went back to the pyramids for a second time because we didn't get to go inside the Great Pyramid the first time, and we thought it was an opportunity we couldn't really miss, even though it costs 400 Egyptian pounds on top of the entry fee, but it's worth it. We went on a Friday, which was a horrible idea because it's the most crowded day of the week, but at least it wasn't so crowded inside the pyramid. This is what the entryway looks like. We took some videos walking inside, but watch what happens with my phone. Look at that weird shape. What is that? Do you guys know what that is? It's kind of creepy walking into a pyramid. Anyways, here's the first walkway. We were pretty surprised because it wasn't a tiny little crawl space like the pyramids in Dashur. I'm assuming you guys have seen my other TikToks about the other pyramids and the KFC. Oh my gosh, look, it's an ancient Egyptian power plug. When we got to the end of the hallway, there was a little staircase going downwards to another chamber that was closed off, but the way we went was upwards into another little crawl space. This one wasn't as cramped as the pyramids of Dashur, but we met this guy who literally figured it out. He was sliding down on his elbows. So smart. I tried doing it as well, and I just discovered that that is literally the best way to climb inside the pyramids. Look at that. Make sure you wear long sleeves so you can slide. It's a lot more comfortable. Next, we got to a bigger open chamber with stairs up above a closed chamber below. This one was nice and tall and not claustrophobic at all, and well lit also, but it was a little bit stuffy inside, not gonna lie. It was also a bit of a shock to the senses because it looked like it was horizontal, but it was actually at like a probably 40-degree angle. Super trippy. So at the end, we finally get to the King's Chamber. You guys might have watched some documentaries about this. I know we definitely have, and it was pretty incredible to be there in person. So the King's Chamber has a bunch of granite, which could only possibly have been sourced from miles and miles away in Aswan. It has a flat top, which they discovered recently has more chambers above it so it doesn't collapse from the weight of all the stones. We got a little bit creative with some photos here. What do you think? I think they look pretty cool. and we saw the old sarcophagus and an ancient Egyptian air conditioner. For any energy-believing people out there, I truly think the energy in this place was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was just pulsating through my body, and we had a little bit of meditation inside just so we could feel the vibe of the pyramid. We really didn't want to leave, so we checked out this closed chamber below, which leads to maybe the Queen's Chamber or something. I took a video in there with my light on, and you could see all sorts of weird orbs and things moving around. Does anyone know what that is? Because when I turned my light off, I couldn't see any of it with my eyeballs. But do you see all that movement? Crazy. I reluctantly slid my way back down very comfortably this time, and I decided to try that filming trick on another closed-off chamber. What do you think? I'm actually very curious to hear people's opinions on this because I'm sure they'll be very varied, so go ahead and comment below. Here you can see we were a little bit sweaty when we got outside. It is quite humid in there, but they do have ancient Egyptian air conditioners. Anyway, I just wanted to reiterate, if anyone's coming to Egypt, don't come on a Friday. This is what it looks like. But that in the background is the new Grand Egyptian Museum, which did open this week. One last shot of this beautiful pyramid and some kids who wanted to take photos of us because they love taking photos with foreigners. Anyway, let me know what you thought of this adventure.
You can take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply by 43,200 and you get the polar radius of the Earth. You can measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, multiply it by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. I won't bore you, but that number is not a random number. Great Pyramid is almost perfectly aligned to true north within 3/60ths of a single degree. 13-acre footprint, 6 million tons. 481 feet high, and aligned to true north with this incredible precision. I try and mention this to archaeologists. They say, it's just a coincidence. It's just rubbish. You know, that's what they say. And it's such a lazy way to dismiss the data, rather than getting to grips with the data and saying, could this really have happened by coincidence, or is something going on here? I've never seen a satisfactory explanation from the Egyptological fraternity as to how this was done. This thing is just a gigantic mystery in stone. It challenges us to think again about everything in the ancient world.
I can tell you this, the tallest thing humans built after the pyramids.
I think it's a building in Dubai.
No. So in other words, what's the next tallest thing after the pyramids?
Oh, right after.
Yeah. What is the next tallest thing we built? Stable structure after the pyramids.
What?
The Eiffel Tower.
Really?
Yes. 89, late 1800s in Paris, the Eiffel Tower.
Huh.
That was the first stable structure we built as a civilization that was taller than the pyramids. So the Egyptians knew they knew architecture. They knew. No one's taken that away from them. But to claim they have some secret knowledge of the functionings of the universe, no. No.
Well, people love saying that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it makes for a great TV.
But the fact that they didn't have steel, and the fact that you're dealing with the very, very most recent 2,500 BC, and they built...
You just have to be more ingenious, more innovative than we otherwise would have to be, yeah. And how do you move the blocks? Those rocks are nowhere in the region. Mm-hmm. They were carted from they found a place where those rocks were would have been mined, removed, and those are some big ass rocks.
I was watching a thing recently, actually, about how they think that the Egyptians just found the pyramids and the Sphinx.
One thing is that for sure the Egyptians made it because it was in Egypt.
Okay,
like it's just different.
Yes,
different
sir.
era. I think what we're saying is they're people from a different era.
Yes, sir.
The amazing society that built the pyramids, whoever those people were, who knows what kind of civilization they had at that point.
Sure.
But they might have been far more advanced than us.
Sure.
Just in a different way.
Sure.
And for sure they knew how to move stone in a way we still don't understand.
Right.
We have no idea how the fuck they did that. No idea how they made 2,300,000 stones meet perfectly at the top and then covered in smooth limestone. It's fucking insane.
And channel energy.
Yeah, well,
and vibrate inside of the pyramid to channel fucking energy.
Who knows what they were doing when they built that?
It's crazy.
People get crazy about this, and they think it's...
Well, I didn't mean to offend anybody if I did. Okay.
No, you definitely didn't.
And something worth mentioning, Joe, is that the people in Egypt, they believed in what's called Kemet, the people, K-H-E-M-I-T, the people that existed before the Egyptians. And, you know, when we hear these stories about the Great Pyramid being for a tomb for the pharaoh, it's worth mentioning that even the locals didn't believe that. And those theories weren't developed until the latter part of the 1800s, early 1900s. by explorers that came in from Germany, France, and England, and they are the ones. So just to clarify, the saying that the pyramids were built to be tombs for the pharaohs, that was their purpose, wasn't even developed until 150 years ago. That's it. Like, they were taught, like, these theories that, like, oh, the pyramids were tombs, that's recent, and it was by invaders, so to speak. And it's worth mentioning that when you go through inside these pyramids of Giza, there's not one single glyph in any of them whatsoever. There was never a mummy found in any Egyptian pyramid ever. Quite literally, the only reason why we are told this stuff is because that was the theory developed by these men that went in there, in the late 1800s and said, I believe these must have been for the pharaohs. That makes sense.
So there's no hieroglyphs that depict it as the
Zero.
Zero. Do you know if you cut and place 10 stones a day, it would take you 664 years to make the pyramid? There's 2,300,000 stones in the Great Pyramid. It's very likely that the entire world experienced a cataclysmic disaster around 11,800, 12,000 years ago, somewhere in that range. And it knocked us back into the Stone Age.
Dude,
but those people who were around before that were probably more sophisticated than we are. We just have a hard time imagining that because we don't have any evidence of it.
And we just don't think that the execution matches up with the technology. If we found some tech that would make sense, I think that we could go, okay, maybe this did happen 4,000 years ago, or whatever it is. But so far, the idea of like a chisel and a stone carving all these blocks and then people just dragging them in the sand, I think it seems a little bit
There's some real
unreasonable.
problems with that.
Yeah.
There's some real problems with the actual physical limitations of the size of these obelisks where they're cutting them in the mountains and they have to move them hundreds of miles. How are you getting them out of the mountains? Like, what are you doing? This is like 2,000 tons. Like, what the fuck are you saying?
Yeah. You said it, I think I was listening to the pod with you guys and you were like, if I was Elon Musk, I'd just build one. And I get that to a certain extent.
I don't know if you could.
The head of the Sphinx is way too small in relation to the body. It doesn't fit with that 270-foot long, 70-foot high body. It looks very much as though the Sphinx once had a much larger head, almost certainly a complete lion at one point. It was a lion with a huge mane. And that head sticking up above the plateau got very heavily eroded, and by the time the ancient Egyptians inherited it, they decided to improve it a little bit, to cut down that heavily eroded head and put the head of a pharaoh on it. The first problem is the ancient Egyptians were masters of proportion. The ancient Egyptian art is rightly world famous for its quality, and they didn't get things out of proportion. They wouldn't make that elementary error. Egyptology claims that's the face of Khafre, who was the successor to Khufu. It doesn't look like any known statues of Khafre that I can see, but let's not worry about that. That headdress is called the Nemes headdress. It's the classic headdress of an Egyptian pharaoh, not, in my view, Khafre, but the headdress of an Egyptian pharaoh. But it's on a head that is way too small by comparison with the body.
So this is the weird thing about Giza, my friend, is that there's something called the Osiris Shaft, which is located directly under the causeway between the Sphinx and the second pyramid. It goes about 100 feet underground. It's carved out of the limestone bedrock. It's the creepiest place I've ever been in my life. It's disturbing.
Why is it disturbing?
I don't know, Joe. Well, there's human bones in there. I stepped on it. I didn't even know.
What?
Yeah.
That's the shaft right there?
So that's the entrance into it, and then you go straight down from there. Okay. So that's the first shaft. So it's 3 different shafts, and you go down, and here's where it gets, this is the crazy part. When you get to the 3rd level, which is completely dark and freaky, there was a side tunnel. Zahi Hawass himself, he's standing in front of this tunnel that went sideways, and he says, it's yet to be explored, and I don't know what's down there. And I'm thinking, the hell you don't know what's down there? Like, you never walked down there? But Joe, they've since sealed it up. It's like cinder blocks. They sealed it up.
What?
Yes! There are things that have gone underground in Egypt that, for whatever reason, Joe, is just off limits to the public. Completely off limits.
Egypt is a fantastic example because there's stuff that's under the sand that's even older than the massive stuff that's above the sand, and the stuff under the sand that they find when they dig deeper, it's a totally different style of building. That's the wild shit. The wild shit is that if it wasn't for those stones, if everybody lived like we live today in glass houses and shit, there'd be nothing left. There'd be nothing. What would you find, like a regular house made out of wood and glass? What the fuck is going to be there in 10,000 years? Zero. Zero. There'd be nothing left. You'd find nails. Oh, look, I found a nail. What would you find? You'd find a few things. But most of it would be consumed by the earth.
Yeah, most of it.
But those guys, they figured out something that no one, they bullshit that they could figure out how to do that today. They don't know how to do that today.
I don't know what was going on in Egypt at that time when they was building like that.
I think they were beyond advanced. I think we are. Graham Hancock has this amazing quote. He said that human beings are a species with amnesia.
Oh, yes, for sure.
For sure.
Oh, for sure.
And I think the way we've gone today technologically with like phones and microphones and video cameras and shit, like we've gone into an electronic technology. Yeah. I think they went into another technology that was different, a different path, but way more powerful. They were able to move stones out of the mountains and move them 500 miles. They don't have any fucking idea how they did it.
I had no doubt at the time that my colleagues in Egyptology must know what they're talking about, and all of that changed literally within 30, without exaggerating, 30 to 120 seconds of first seeing the Sphinx. Yeah, it really did.
What was your first impression?
Because my first impression of the Sphinx was, now that I saw it on the ground, in person, there was something wrong with the Egyptological dating. Because when you look at the Sphinx, as a geologist with a geological eye, this was not weathered by wind and sand.
At one point in time, there was an incredibly sophisticated society that lived on Earth, and that's the Africans, the Egyptians. What they had done in, whatever thousands of years it was that they built that stuff, because it's under dispute as to how old it really is. At the very least, it's 2,500 BC, but they think it's way older than that. And these people had technology that we still don't understand. We don't know what they used. We don't know how they did it. But they moved 2,300,000 stones that were tons, some of them from hundreds of miles. They cut obelisks out of the mountains and moved them 1,000 miles. They don't have no idea how they did it. They have no idea what they used to cut them. They have no idea what they used to move them. And you're talking about people at that point in time, when you're dealing with 5,000, 6,000 years ago, we thought they were like hunter-gatherers. Like, how did they do that? Yeah. If it's really 10,000 years old, 12,000 years old, 20,000 years old, what kind of sophisticated culture exists that went on a different path than we went on? We went on the path of internal combustion engines and electricity and computers. They might have gone on a similarly advanced or more advanced way, but with a completely different angle. They came at technology from a completely different space. And that's what we see when we see those stone structures. How are you getting that 50-ton chunk of granite out of a fucking mountain and moving it down, even with modern equipment? How are you getting it over the mountain?
So it seems like
you don't even have roads. What are you doing?
They were incredibly advanced.
Incredibly advanced.
With math, with science, with technology.
Certainly with geometry. 20-ton gigantic stone blocks that were taken from a mountain 500 miles away, and no one has any idea how the fuck they got them.
Nobody has any clue.
No guesses.
Right.
There's some guesses about, maybe the river system was different back then. Whatever. I don't think we can do what they did. I think if you just look at it for just the sheer dynamics, the volume of stone that they moved, the precision in which they built it, I really don't think we can do that. Just the symmetry of the faces of the statues is unparalleled, and they're immense. These are monstrously huge, perfectly symmetrical faces.
Right.